I've already got a half of an onion here. I rule of thumb, sometimes in recipes, you'll see small, medium, or large onion. And they may not give you the cup size, like cup, half cup, I like to say a small onion fits like in my hand. A medium onion is about like this. A large onion is one that I can't really, hold with one hand. So I would say this is a large onion. So I'm cut an onion in half, and then of course you'll take the peeling off and throw that away unless you have compost. They always give me the onions and garlic are always giving me a fit with the peels. The other thing, this was just a personal, choice that I choose to do, but I like the sweet onions or Vidalia onions. I like the sweet onions. First of all, they don't make me cry when I'm doing a video, but they're a lot milder and they are sweet. So once you get to roasting them or sauteing them, they're just super sweet and delicious. So this is a sweet onion, and if you want to, let me get my other knife. If you want to have small pieces, you would just go in, not cutting all the way through, like so, and then keeping your fingers out of the way. I always like to show some techniques when we're cooking. So I just, did about 3 cuts this way, and then held the onion. You notice the onion, it's not rolling around or rocking around. And then I just, made my cuts. And now when I cut the onion, I've got these nice little small pieces. So this is the size I like to do for soups. Now, as far as the carrots and celery, that would be next. With the carrots, if you're buying organic carrots, personally, I don't think you need to peel them, but you certainly can. You always want to make sure that your carrots are firm. They're not, really nice, firm, organic carrot. But if you do want to peel the carrot, then you'll just take your peeler. I just hold it and I just turn it. You can keep the peels if you want and make stock. I throw these to make vegetable stock or chicken stock. I made this stock tonight for this stew. These are great to, save your scraps. If you have a compost, Lord love you. That's a wonderful thing to have. But so we just got our peeled carrot, and then a couple of things. I usually just cut it in half, and then for the stew, you can just cut this into small pieces because you're kind of wanting all the ingredients to land on the spoon. But if you're wanting to do a different cut, or cut the ends off, I like to just cut a little bit off the end so that when I'm cutting it, I've got a nice flat surface. And again, it's also for safety purposes. But a different cut that you could do instead of just making carrot slices is I just sort of move the knife like so. I'm just angling, moving the carrot, angling the carrot, moving the knife. And then you just got these, what I think is still a nice cut for a stew or soup. It's just a little bit larger. Again, more than you probably wanted to know about carrots. But there's also other things that we will be doing where I'll do a julienne cut and things like that. But once you get your carrots done, a lot of people will also cut them. I've got the knife angled and I'm cutting it. You've probably seen this in some of the different restaurants. Just cutting the carrot gives you more surface, a little bit bigger cut. So the carrots go in, and then we're going to do celery. I love celery. And if you don't know about this trick, if you have never roasted celery, it is great. I just put celery on a roasting sheet, put some olive oil, some salt and pepper, and roasted celery is great. It's just, great. I love it as a side dish or, in a hot pasta salad. But with the celery, I'm using the leaves and everything. Keep those leaves. I'm going to show you what I do with it at the end. But I'm just, cutting the celery. And then, like I said, I've gotten a little head start. So I've added the vegetables to the pot. Once the chicken has cooked, you'll remove the chicken from the stock pot and add your vegetables, and the chicken will have left these wonderful, delicious little bits cooked, and there'll be some moisture and some oil in there, so you'll just add the carrots and the onion and the celery and scrape up those delicious bits at the bottom of the pot. And then we're going to add some stock. And one of the things with stews, I always think stews are thicker than a soup. And so one of the things that we're going to do tonight, and you could use cornstarch, this is all-purpose flour. I've got my cute little whisk, but this is 2 tablespoons of flour into a cup, if you've got the recipe following along. But I'm just whisking this. I love a whisk. If you don't have a whisk, get a whisk. I have all sizes, but this one is great for just a small little quantity. Salad dressings or 1 egg or doing this. So with the soup, once the soup, all the ingredients are hot, you don't want to put flour in a cold broth or cold ingredients. The soup is on, and I'm going to pour this into the pot. Turn it up just a little bit. And while this is, now keep in mind, I've cooked the chicken, and I have taken the chicken out, and I've added the onions and the carrots and the celery. Now I've added the cup of broth with some flour. Now we're going to add some garlic, and pardon me if I'm going out of order. I'm going with what's in my head. This is 6 cloves of garlic, and which might sound like a lot, but if you think about it, we've got the vegetables, we've got potatoes, we've got the chicken. All of that absorbs the salt and the garlic and pepper that we've used up to now. And when you're salting and peppering the chicken, I meant to mention this, don't be shy about it. I just, like to, pick it up, have some salt bowls. You don't have to do that. You use a salt shaker. But I go through so much during the day that this is just, the easiest thing for me to do. The other thing is I've put in a bay leaf. I love the smell of bay leaves. With any spice, bay leaf always comes to mind because unless you're making a lot of spaghetti sauce or soups and stews, you're probably not using it a lot. So my rule of thumb, I go through spices so fast, but if you have anything that the label, like you don't recognize the label because it's so dated, they no longer have that label anymore, you might want to check the freshness. Also check the date. And I will be honest, the dates are really hard to see. So when you get home from buying the seasonings or spices, get you a little like I call them yard sale tags or yard sale stickers, and like fluorescent green or orange or whatever, and put the date, write the date down with a Sharpie and stick that on, and you can keep up with it a lot better. It's just a little trick that I like to do. But bay leaves, anything is supposed to be fragrant and smell like what the label says it is. So if you open cloves and you don't smell anything, then you might want to get a new container of cloves. With fresh thyme, I love this. One of the things that I noticed, because I got lazy one day when I was making soup, I just threw the whole stem in, leaves and all. And what I noticed is with the stirring and the cooking, the leaves really kind of fell off on their own. But if you like to meticulously pick the leaves off of the stems, be my guest. Because at your fine restaurants, someone is getting paid to do just this. So, you can do it either way. It's very easy. You can also use the stems and just, chop them really, really fine. I probably wouldn't do that with rosemary because the stem is so thick. But thyme, feel free to throw this in. I think the recipe calls for 4 sprigs. I'm just going to throw this in the pot and stir that around. Thyme also makes a wonderful garnish. Usually with garnishing, you'll want to use what's in the recipe. And since thyme is in the recipe, when you're serving this, you could just put a little sprig on top of your soup or your stew, and it's just really pretty. So we've got the bay leaf in, we've got the thyme in. Now it's time to put the potatoes in. Now the recipe calls for fingerling potatoes. Fingerling potatoes they're a little narrower than this and a little longer. They're fingerling potatoes. I found these beautiful baby Yukon Gold potatoes today, and I thought they would be great. So again, what I'm going to do is just cut these in thirds, keeping my flat surface, and then so that they're small but not diced, just cutting that in thirds again. So that's a nice size for the soup. We'll do the same thing with these other pieces. And then while everything is seasoning and cooking, the potatoes cut this small, really won't take that long. So I'm going to put this in. And then we're going to add the remaining chicken stock. So I'm going to go over and do that. I'm going to add the chicken that we've already cooked. And right now, because of that flour that I put in the pot, it's thickening up nicely. I'm sorry I can't zoom in and give you an overhead shot, but this is the cooked chicken thighs that's going in. Oh, it smells so good. One of the things that my mom, who was a great cook, one of the things that she said is when you're newly married, if you'll just cut up a fresh onion and get it cooking on the stove, your husband will think you've been cooking all day. I never forget that. It's so true. As a personal chef, when I'm in clients' homes cooking, all I will have done was cut or cook onions, celery, and carrots, and they walk in and they're like, oh my gosh, it smells so good. So just remember that. You can just cook an onion and they'll think you've been cooking all day. So we've got the potatoes in now. This all will take about 20-25 minutes. The chicken's already been cooked. You've got a nice hearty chicken broth, which is wonderful this time of year with cold and I would say flu season, but I'll leave it at that. Salt and pepper, we'll have already salted and peppered the chicken. You can add more at the end. I'm a big believer in taste everything. Always have spoons out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over and serve a portion and present it to you, and then see if you have any questions. This will have, speeding up the process. But again, trust me, everything has been cooking and simmering. It's just really nice. Be sure you want to pick out the bay leaves, because there's no prize if if you're the one that gets the bay leaf. This would be great with some crusty bread. It's nice and hot. We'll get some fresh parsley. Parsley, it's it's been around for a while. It's not real fancy, but look at this. I don't know if you can see, but this is going to thicken up some more because there's the bay leaf. I win the prize. This is going to thicken up because of the flour and the earlier stock that we added, and also the potatoes are going to add quite a bit of a nice natural thickening agent. But I think it looks great. Let's do a little taste. The thyme and the bay leaf, I think it needs a little bit more salt. I'm just going to salt this one serving, a little bit of pepper. If you can, use fresh ground pepper. It makes a really big difference. Now you can buy some really nice coarse peppers from good reputable seasoning companies. But this by itself is a meal. If you want to add a salad with a simple lemon olive oil dressing, that would be great. But this freezes well. It keeps in the refrigerator, and lunch, dinner, even breakfast. I love having things like this for breakfast, especially on a cold day. So that is the Hearty chicken stew. And if you have any questions, I'm so glad Dr. Jeannie Sykes has joined us, because she's always adds some wonderful nutritional tips. So stick around for her comments. And thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Lynn. I think someone had a question about potatoes, if you peeled them or not peeled them.
I did not peel these. if they had been russets, I probably would, but the peel on a Yukon Gold and the fingerling are so thin, I just left it on, but it's a personal preference.
Great. Yeah, if you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Lynn. She'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any, or even just sharing something. Someone asked, what is the calorie count per serving? I don't know if anyone can answer that question.
I did not keep up with that, but Jeannie, I had to put you on the spot. Cup of chicken broth, an ounce of chicken, carrots and celery, potatoes.
Yeah, I mean, and this would not be all that difficult to figure out. And actually, here's my answer. If you want to figure it out, just go to the website calorieking.com, put in all the ingredients, add them up, divide by number of, and there you have it. But you know what? I really do not count calories. Calories do count. They absolutely to manage weight. We want to take in the number that we burn. However, I really feel so often nutritional and it takes a little bit of the joy out of it. I could all hands seems out of proportion in terms of a very tiny amount of refined flour. There's a high quality fat and not an excessive amount. You know, it's a balanced dish that is not going to be excessive in, you know, I know that's probably not the answer somebody's looking for, but I would give.
I want to make sure, it seems like it was a little frozen there for a second. I want to make sure we still are on. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm cooking in my kitchen and it's looking good. I'm cooking actually in my Instant Pot. So I'm hoping I can speed things up a little bit on the tail end. But it looks good.
Well, good, and good for you. The Instant Pot was I was really avoiding getting that, and Sherry Castle did a wonderful workshop at a food festival that I went to, and she completely sold me. I went out and got a 6-quart. I did bone broth in an hour versus 24. Great stocks in the Instant Pot. I haven't done rice because I like I don't know, I'm weird. I like the process of cooking rice. But the Instant Pot is really great and does a great job for soups. I love the saute feature.
Yep, that's what I'm using right now.
Good for you.
Yeah, I love it. It just speeds everything up if you don't have much time.
It does.
There are some good questions on the chat.
Yeah.
Flour.
Someone asked, they recently discovered that onions gave them heartburn. Is there an onion substitute?
Maybe dry onion powder. I mean, I don't know if it's the onion itself or it's an allergy. I have a friend that's allergic to onions, but I don't know if onion powder, if you tried, or granulated onion. Jeannie, do you have any thoughts?
I think we lost you.
I want to just add a little comment here. My Wi-Fi cut out, so if I repeat something Lynn already said, my apologies. But did you suggest garlic instead?
No, I didn't. Even though garlic's in the soup, but that's a really good thought.
But maybe just ramping up the garlic a little bit.
Or maybe more celery.
Yeah.
More
Celery is a
everything.
great seasoner.
We have another question. If you make a large stew, can you freeze leftovers for later?
Absolutely. And one thing, don't ever freeze in glass. Get you some, you can use the Tupperware, or I say Tupperware, you know what I mean? Showing my age. But, the plastic containers, make sure they're toxin free. I get boxes online, like 12 ounces, 16 ounces. You just want to make sure that when you're freezing, you want to leave about an inch free from the top. If you fill it all the way full, it's going to expand. The top's going to blow. You're going to have a mess. So just leave about an inch room of space in the top of the soup when you're freezing it, and you're good to go. This is great. Soup's always better the next day, or the second or third day. But absolutely, this is a freezer-friendly recipe.
That's great. And I guess to go along with that, someone else also asked, how long would it last in the freezer?
I'm probably a little bit more strict than this. For soups, I would say 6 months would be fine. Just three to 6 months. It really depends. But 6 months is usually the norm for soups like this. Everything's cooked. You do want to make sure before you freeze anything that it cools. You don't want to take something that's boiling hot, put it in the container, put the lid on it, and put it in the freezer, because that will open the door for bacteria to grow with that temperature. If you think about it, just let it get to room temperature on the counter, and be sure to label everything. How many of you have what is this? It was such a great idea at the time. You've had, I've got extra chili, I'll just put that in the freezer. And then when it freezes solid, you're not really sure what that is. So be sure to label everything with the date and what it is, so that family members will know. It'll just a great way to identify all your food.
Great, thanks. Someone wants to know if there is an alternative for all-purpose flour.
So if you're speaking of gluten-free, there absolutely is. One, you could use cornstarch. You could also use agar. You could also use, there's gluten-free flour blends. I know King Arthur has a really great gluten-free all-purpose blend. It's equal, measurements. I've used that a lot. I don't work for King Arthur, but I have used their gluten-free flour, and it's excellent.
Lynn, if you
Yes.
want to, I have not tried this, but if you want to get adventuresome, I actually want to try this, because it's only been brought to my attention recently that you can try thickening things with chia seeds.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
a lot of people are familiar with putting chia seeds in yogurt or drinks and thickening things like that. But I think of them as being, or the only way I've had them is something on the sweet side rather than savory. But chia seeds nutritionally are actually a pretty good source of calcium. So that might be interesting to experiment with.
Right.
Then another thing that is a thickener that you would probably need to experiment a bit with is ground flax seeds. And flax seeds, like okra, have a lot of soluble fiber in them. And for anyone who has ever boiled okra, you get that goopy stuff, but it's what is so great in a soup. And I don't know why you couldn't add okra to the soup, Lynn. I mean, would that?
Oh, you could.
Yeah, I tend to
Absolutely.
add okra to a lot of soups, not creamed ones, of course, but a lot of vegetable soups. And I love the taste of it in a soup, the texture, and that you don't get the goopiness if it's in a water-based something or other.
Right.
So flaxseed meal, you whip it up in, again, using that whisk in a little bit of water. And that's one option. Maybe chia seeds would work. And then just throwing some nice And just use I use frozen okra to just keep it easy.
Good, great ideas. And be careful with the flax. It's high in fiber. But I also keep my ground flaxseed in the freezer, just as a storage. If you're not going to be going through it quickly, it keeps it from going rancid.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up because flax, even whole flax seeds, should always be refrigerated or kept in the freezer. Air, heat, and light are enemies of that high quality fat that's found in flax.
So good for you, though.
Yep.
A question about the chia seeds. Do you grind those or use them whole?
Oh, I would absolutely use them whole. They're little tiny seeds, like
I didn't know if they were like flax.
yeah, no, they're much smaller than flax. And while we're on that topic, buying something like flax seeds or chia seeds, or for that matter, spices, I would recommend people go to someplace like Deep Roots, where you have a very large selection, especially for spices, because Lynn's talking about how you pull out this spice bottle and it's it's years old because you got it for some recipe where you needed this much and then you had to buy the whole thing. And so if you buy your spices in bulk, first of all, I think just the unit price is less expensive than buying them in the grocery store. And then secondly, you can buy just the amount you want so you don't run into that problem of your spices getting to be a million years old before you've ever used them.
Can you put spices in the refrigerator to keep them longer?
You can, if you have space, depending on how many spices you have and you have space in the refrigerator, you could. I don't see why not, but some things they're just make sure that there could be some moisture to get in. I don't know, but so I think space for everybody is the key thing with pantry items and seasonings and spices. It just they can take over.
Yeah, and I would add on to what you said, Lynn, about moisture. If you store them on the door of the refrigerator, that means that every time you open that door, it's exposed to possibly a little drop in rise in temperature. And then the temperature, in other words, when you open and close the door, tends to go up and down a bit. And over time, I have read that is one reason why we should not store our supplements on the door of the refrigerator, because you can get some condensation and that's not going to be great. But I know my mother-in-law, who lived in Central Florida, kept a lot of her spices in the refrigerator or freezer because, it's just like our summers here. Even though you have air conditioning, you don't realize, especially if they're in a cupboard that is on an outside wall, they are going to be much warmer and a little more humid than what's maybe ideal storage.
How about storing flour in the refrigerator? Flour and cornmeal.
I do, usually. Lynn, how about you?
I don't, but I'm going through it, quickly.
And that's the key. Depends on how fast you use it.
Right.
I suppose you can buy your flour at Deep Roots too and buy the quantities that you need.
Well, earlier in the pandemic, I bought it wherever I could find it.
We have somebody asked a question about using pasta instead of potatoes and cooking. Do you cook the noodles first or let them cook in the stew?
That's a great question. So, whole wheat penne, the whole wheat elbow. I love orzo. I just made orzo salad today. That would be good. So yes, any kind of pasta would be great. And you can do it either way. So if you do the pasta is going to, of course, absorb the liquid. What I would do is I would go ahead and make the soup and then cook the pasta separately and leave it, cook it 2 minutes under what the instructions say, so that when you add it to the soup, you'll let the flavor of the soup, soak into the pasta, and the pasta won't overcook, or there won't be that guessing game, but you could certainly add the pasta to the soup. You may just need to add a little bit of water once, or add the pasta to the boiling stock and maybe add a little bit more water. You could just also just kind of add to as you go. If it was, you just don't want to cook it. I don't like mushy pasta, but yeah, I mean, you could do it either way. I think doing it separately would give you a little bit more control though on the texture of the pasta.
That's great. And then someone asked, what were you going to show us with the celery leaves?
Thank you. I knew there was something. I knew there was something that I forgot. Okay, so I've got them keeping cool and fruit. So I use. I like to make things pretty. I think we eat with our eyes, and we also want to make the have the food taste good. But celery leaves are I think they're flavorful and they're pretty. So this is super simple. But keep your celery leaves and then just add it as a garnish. And it becomes part of the soup. It's an ingredient in the soup. It tastes good, and and they're all in different shades. The real light green, dark green. But yeah, I use the celery leaves for garnishes, and I use it for garnishes on everything. I don't try to use everything, all parts of the vegetable, so there's no waste. But thank you for suggesting that. I didn't mean to keep y'all in suspense. It's just a celery leaf, but it adds a little flair to your soup.
Would you
Lynn,
tell us how to make vegetable stock?
You certainly could.
Lynn, I have a question for you on celery. I have not tasted roasted celery. That sounds wonderful. And I'd like you to just expound on that a little bit about, do you cut it up in small pieces? Do you keep the stalks whole? And you said roasting sheet. You talking about parchment paper?
Yeah. So I take I put parchment paper on a baking sheet, and I keep it I cut the celery in maybe 2 inches. Depends on how I'm going to use it. If it's going to be a side dish, I might do 1 to 2 inch pieces. And then I put that in a bowl and I toss just a little bit of olive oil, making sure everything gets coated really well. Salt and pepper, toss it again, and then spread it out on the baking sheet, making sure there's space in between the pieces so that they roast instead of steam. Because if things are too close on the baking sheet, they'll steam instead of caramelize. And then I'll do them in the oven, at 425 for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I don't flip them over, but I love it. They caramelize so beautifully. And it's very sweet. If you've ever roasted garlic, the whole bulb of a garlic, it changes flavor completely. It's like candy. Celery to me is already sweet, but roasting it just brings that out even more. Any other questions?
I want to add one thing. You mentioned composting earlier, and just for people who might be interested in composting but have never done it before, we have a compost pile in the backyard that we've had for years now. And I was lucky enough to have a friend who was moving away and didn't want to take her composting bin with her. So she said, come on over and get it. So I had a ready-made compost bin. And, if you read about composting, it just is so off-putting because it makes it sound very complicated sometimes. And it's totally easy. We just throw everything in. And I really have used some of that very, very rich, dark soil that is packed with worms, wonderful earthworms, in the spring sometimes when I'm, and not that I do much in a garden, believe me, but, and by the way, this year we never got around to, I think it was pandemic stuff just going on. We didn't plant any tomatoes this year, but guess what? Grew up voluntarily right beside my compost bin, 2 tomato plants.
There you go.
Bonus. Yeah. So I really recommend it. And I would venture to guess that it's made a pretty big dent in how much garbage we get rid of every week when the garbage truck comes around.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, if there aren't any more questions, thank you all for joining us. You've asked some great
Yeah.
questions.
We
I
have
hope that
more,
the
sorry.
person cooking along has that's turned out well. I'm hearing that there's 2 more questions.
Someone asked, is chicken stock the same as chicken broth?
So chicken, that's a great question. But broth is typically a little bit lighter than stock. If you're going to make stock and like bone broth, but it's got bones in it. Most chefs that I know, we put bones in the stock anyway. So the bone broth was sort of a marketing thing, because if you're making really good, you're putting chicken feet in there and chicken necks, and that's stock to me, with the vegetables and all that. But broth in the grocery store, broth is usually a little bit lighter. Stock will be a little heavier. I don't know if they use bones in the stock or not, but now you can buy the bone broth. Again, if you could use, to me, stock, when I say stock, to me, stock is that I've used, bones, and I've used, like when you get if you roast a chicken at home and don't throw that carcass away, throw it in your stock pot, add some water, the carrots, the vegetables, the onion peels, everything, and let that simmer. There's some great recipes for making that from scratch on the internet. But I hope that's answered your question. But I think usually broth is it's less condensed. That might be a better way of saying less condensed than a stock or a bone broth. There was another question.
It's not necessarily a question, but someone said they have a spare compost unit in case anybody would like it. So
There you go.
yeah.
Somebody go for it.
But yeah, if you want to add anything, Jeannie, to today's class, feel free to do that.
No, I would just say this sounds like a delicious. Oh yeah, where can we get the recipe?
We will post the recipe on site. I think it was posted a couple of weeks ago, but we'll recheck that and send it out again.
That sounds great. I think everyone would like to try it, and it's nutritionally speaking, boy, I mean, it's great.
Well, good. I'm so glad you're here to answer some and add so much to the conversation.
Fun as always.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time for Live Life Well.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.